December 13, 1943, Kiel, Germany, 28,000 feet. The German fighter, which would be pulling away from a P-47 at this altitude, can't shake him. Jaeger's aircraft is faster at this altitude, turns tighter, climbs better. His 6.50 caliber machine guns, the P-51B, carries two more than earlier models, converge on the 109's fuselage. Pieces of the German fighter's canopy shatter. The 109 rolls inverted and dives away. For 2 years, American fighter pilots have had to abandon bomber formations at the German border, leaving the fortresses and liberators to fight alone. Where they once faced continuous fighter attacks from the moment they crossed into Germany until they limped back to England, now the Luftwaffe attacks come in desperate. The mathematics of aerial combat have reversed. Now the Germans must worry about their own fuel if they engage too far from base. January 11, 1944, 8 Fighter Command Headquarters, England. Red arcs show the combat radius of different fighter types. P-47 Thunderbolt, 375 miles. P-38 Lightning, 450 miles. 850 miles means Berlin. It means every target in Germany. It means the Luftwaffe has nowhere to hide. Effective immediately, our primary objective is no longer close escort of bombers. It's destruction of the German fighter force in the air and on the ground. Fighter doctrine has held that escorts should stick close to bombers, providing direct defense. But Doolittle sees the bigger picture. If you destroy German fighters, bombers don't need defense. We'll position fighters ahead of bomber formations, engage enemy fighters before they reach the bombers. We'll force the Luftwaffe to fight when and where we choose. My pilots are tired of circling bombers while Germans get away. For years, the German capital has been safe from American daylight raids. Too far for fighters to escort bombers. Too heavily defended for unescorted bombers to survive. Our AF Bomber Command has hit Berlin at night, suffering appalling losses. The Americans haven't tried. The logistical challenge is immense. The Merlin engine, though reliable, requires different maintenance than the P-47's radial engine. The 354th Fighter Group, the 357th, the 4th, these elite units get first priority. Other groups fly combat missions in P-47s. Lieutenant Urban Ben Drew checks his fuel gauges. Enough for another 40 minutes of combat, then the long flight home. His P-51 Mustang has been in the air for 3 hours. Drew counts at least 20 Bf-109s and FW-190s, making diving passes through the formation. Drew turns toward the threat, his wingman staying in formation. He fires a short burst. Drew closes to 150 yards and fires again. More German fighters are forming up for another pass at the bombers. The Luftwaffe pilots hesitate, and that hesitation is fatal. The B-17s complete their bomb run and turn for home. His fuel tanks are nearly empty, but he made it. March 4, 1944. First American fighter mission to Berlin. Colonel Blakesley leads the 4th Fighter Group's Mustangs, heading out ahead of the bomber stream. At 09:45 hours, the first Mustangs cross into German airspace. The psychological impact on German civilians, who've been told repeatedly that their Luftwaffe controls the skies, is immense. Luftwaffe fighters scramble to intercept, but they're outnumbered and outranged. The Germans have fuel for perhaps 15 minutes before they must land or risk running dry. The tactical advantage is overwhelming. The bomber formations strike aircraft factories and railroad yards around Berlin. Losses are significant. 69 bombers and 11 fighters fail to return, but it's a sustainable loss rate, and the Germans lose 66 fighters. More importantly, the psychological barrier has been broken. If American fighters can reach Berlin, they can reach anywhere. Over the following weeks, the pattern repeats. Large bomber formations escorted by swarms of P-51s, ranging across Germany at will. The Luftwaffe is forced into an impossible position: defend everywhere simultaneously, or concede air superiority. They cannot defend everywhere. The Mustang's range makes it impossible. German fighter production actually increases through early 1944, but pilot quality declines catastrophically. Experienced German pilots are being killed faster than they can be replaced. And their replacements have minimal training, sometimes as little as 30 hours in type, before being sent into combat. A green German pilot in a Bf-109 facing an experienced American pilot in a P-51 Mustang is simply target practice. April 1944, Statistical Analysis, 8 Fighter Command. The numbers tell the story. January 1944, 285 German fighters destroyed, 183 American fighters lost. Ratio, 1.56 to 1. February, 396 German fighters destroyed, 171 American lost. Ratio, 2.31 to 1. March, 516 German fighters destroyed, 165 American lost. Ratio, 3.13 to 1. April, 689 German fighters destroyed, 186 American lost. Ratio, 3.70 to 1. The Luftwaffe is being systematically destroyed. Not just in combat, but on the ground. Mustangs strafe airfields, catching German fighters during takeoff or landing, destroying them in their revetments. The long range that allows P-51s to escort bombers deep into Germany also allows them to hunt German aircraft wherever they can be found. Edgar Schmued's obsession with aerodynamic efficiency, his radical laminar flow wing, his Meredith effect cooling system, his weight-saving structural design, all of it has combined with the Merlin engine, high-altitude performance, to create an aircraft that dominates the European skies. The Mustang isn't just a good fighter. It's the right fighter at the right time, exactly what the strategic bombing campaign needed to succeed. And the air war over Europe is about to reach its decisive phase. May 8, 1944. Debden, England. 530 hours. Shangri-La, its nose decorated with swastikas marking his 21 confirmed kills. The mission briefing was sobering. Escort B-17s to Brunswick, Germany, a 5-hour round trip, deep penetration, heavy opposition expected. That word routine represents a revolution in aerial warfare. Radio check, oxygen check, instruments green. She's purring like a kitten, Captain, the crew chief says. He stopped counting the hours he spent in this cockpit, maybe 300 combat hours, maybe more. The P-51 feels like an extension of his own body now, responsive, predictable, forgiving. He's flown P-47 Thunderbolts before converting to Mustangs. The difference is hard to quantify. Every control input produces the desired response with minimal wasted energy. The aircraft goes where you point it, does what you ask, and still has fuel in the tanks at the end of the mission. Gentile primes the Merlin, engages the starter. Gentile runs through his checklist. Oil pressure good, coolant temperature rising normally. Fuel flow steady, magnetos checked. At 0545 hours, the first P-51 takes off. Gentile lifts off smoothly, retracts his landing gear and flaps, and begins the climb to assembly altitude. In the gray dawn light, the Mustangs form up into flights, squadrons, and finally the complete group, 64 fighters in a formation that's become devastatingly effective. By 0630, they rendezvous with the bomber stream. 450 B-17 flying fortresses in tight combat boxes, heading east toward Germany. The Mustangs take up escort positions, some flights close to the bombers. Navigator estimates we'll hit the German border in 35 minutes. Gentile's flight leader announces, "Stay sharp." The North Sea passes below, gray and endless. Gentile checks his fuel. Internal tanks still full. At efficient cruise settings around 270 miles per hour indicated, the Merlin burns approximately 70 gallons per hour. 5.5 hours of flying time, minus reserves. Flak begins immediately, black puffs of 88mm shells bursting at their altitude. Bandits. 12 o'clock high, Angels 30. 6 months ago, the Luftwaffe would have had time to set up perfectly coordinated attacks. Now the Germans must attack quickly before the Mustangs engage them. The P-51's Merlin engine maintains power beautifully at this altitude. The Germans see them coming and split their formation, some diving to attack the bombers, others turning to engage the climbing Mustangs. It's exactly the fragmentation that dooms them. Now they're being forced into individual dogfights where the P-51's advantages, speed, range, numbers are decisive. Gentile picks a 109 that's turning toward the bombers. The 109 banks hard right, diving away. At 20,000 feet, the German pilot makes a mistake. He pulls up sharply in an attempt to reverse the pursuit. Gentile closes to 150 yards. The 109's canopy shatters. More German fighters are pressing attacks on the bombers. This is the new reality of the air war. Luftwaffe pilots must fight through a screen of Mustangs to reach the bombers. The Germans can't outlast them, can't wait them out. The bomber stream presses deeper into Germany. Flak is intense, hundreds of 88mm and 105mm guns throwing steel into the sky. The bombardiers work their Norden bomb sights, calculating wind drift, airspeed, altitude. At 0847, the lead bombardier triggers his release. The city disappears under a spreading carpet of explosions and smoke. Then the bomber stream turns for home, and the long flight back to England begins. But Gentile checks his fuel at 0900 hours. Still 140 gallons remaining. The P-51s stay with the bombers across Germany, across the North Sea, all the way to the English coast. He's been airborne for 5 hours and 10 minutes. How'd she do, Captain? Check the gun cameras, I got one confirmed, maybe a second damaged. 13 lost, a 2.9% loss rate. Sustainable for the strategic bombing campaign. The Luftwaffe lost 48 fighters destroyed, 27 more damaged. The exchange ratio favors the Americans by more than 3 to 1. Multiple bomber streams, each escorted by hundreds of fighters, striking targets across Germany. The Luftwaffe is being ground down by attrition, losing fighters faster than they can be built, losing pilots faster than they can be trained. May 19, 1944, Luftwaffe High Command, Berlin. In the first 19 days of May, the Luftwaffe has lost 572 fighters in combat, nearly 30 per day. We cannot sustain these losses, Gallon tells Reichsmarschall Hermann Gring. Then shoot down more bombers, Gring replies dismissively. That's what fighters are for. We can't reach the bombers. Gallon's frustration boils over. The Americans have this new fighter, the Mustang. Our pilots must fight through the escorts to reach the bombers. And the escorts have numerical superiority and better aircraft. Better than our Bf-109s and FW-190s? Impossible. The Mustang is faster above 25,000 feet, has longer range, and there are more of them. Our kill ratios have reversed. In 1943, we were shooting down 3 American fighters for everyone we lost. Now they're shooting down 3 of ours for everyone they lose. With what? Our training programs have been cut to save fuel. The Americans have hundreds of hours of training before they see combat. This isn't a question of courage or aggression. The conversation ends inconclusively, like so many discussions in the Nazi command structure. But the statistics don't lie. The Luftwaffe is being defeated over its own territory, and the P-51 Mustang is the primary instrument of that defeat. Edgar Schmued's obsession with range and efficiency, dismissed by some in 1940 as impractical perfectionism, has created the weapon that's breaking German air power. Not through revolutionary technology, but through relentless application of sound aerodynamic principles. Reduce drag, improve efficiency, carry more fuel, fly farther. It seems almost mundane when stated that way, but its impact on the war is anything but mundane. The air superiority being won over Europe in May 1944 will make the D-Day invasion possible in June. The destruction of German fighters will enable the strategic bombing campaign to destroy German industrial capacity through the summer and fall. The Mustang's long range will allow it to escort bombers to targets deep in eastern Germany and Czechoslovakia, places the Luftwaffe thought safe. And it all traces back to a team of engineers in California, working around the clock in 1940, trying to achieve the impossible in 120 days. They succeeded. And the world changed. June 20th, 1944. Overplitz, Germany. 29,000 feet. The 109 reverses hard left. Meyer's 24th kill. The Luftwaffe pilots he faces now aren't the veterans of 1940 and 1941. Those men are mostly dead. These replacements have minimal training, fly predictable defensive maneuvers, and often panic when engaged. Petty leader, this is Petty 3. Meyer checks his formation, still 11 Mustangs in good order. This deep into Germany, nearly 600 miles from their English base, and they refighting at full power with enough fuel to get home. The mission that would have been impossible in 1943 is now routine in mid-1944. The bomber formation completes its run. The oil plant disappears under a carpet of explosions. The Luftwaffe's response has been anemic, perhaps 20 fighters total, easily driven off by the escort. 2 years ago, this same target would have drawn 200 German fighters. But every mission matters now. It's a death spiral. Bombers strike oil facilities, reducing German aviation fuel production. Higher casualties require more replacement pilots. July 7, 1944. But the Americans aren't just threatening the bombers, they're re-hunting German fighters with what seems like deliberate malice. A P-51 flashes past, 50 meters away, its pilot not even glancing at Stigler's lone 109. The American is chasing a fleeing Focke-Wulf, closing effortlessly despite the FW-190's reputation for speed. Stigler watches the brief burst of gunfire. This is the third mission this week where Stigler has watched helplessly as his squadron mates are shot down. Not because he's a coward, he has 28 kills. The Americans have numerical superiority, altitude advantage, and fuel to burn. German pilots who engage aggressively die quickly. Those who survive are the ones who've learned to be cautious. But caution means the bombers get through. And when the bombers get through, German cities burn, factories are destroyed, oil production drops. The Luftwaffe's operational capability shrinks further. He's known it since May, when the Mustangs started appearing in massive numbers. The question now isn't whether the Luftwaffe will be defeated, but how long it can continue fighting. All aircraft, defensive formation. Below, the American bombers drop their loads on Munich's marshalling yards. No one attacks. After landing, Stigler learns that 6 aircraft from his Geschwader were lost today. The replacements arriving from training units have 40 hours total flying time. The numbers tell a story of complete air superiority achieved through technological advantage and industrial capacity. American fighter production, P-51 only. German fighter production, all types. The Germans are actually producing more fighters. The Luftwaffe is losing nearly 8 fighters for every American fighter shot down. The P-51 can range across Germany at will. German fighters must defend everywhere simultaneously. Bomber loss rates. The strategic bombing campaign that was unsustainable in 1943, with loss rates exceeding 5% per mission, has become routine. Bombers strike targets across Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia. Edgar Schmued's design has enabled this transformation. Not through armor or defensive armament, those solutions were tried and failed. September 11, 1944, Rulland, Germany. His wingman, Lieutenant William Wisner, stays in perfect formation off his right wing. Pretty's squadron positions itself between the attackers and bombers, the standard escort tactic that's proven devastatingly effective. Yeah, but look how they're flying. The Luftwaffe pilots. Attacking today are mostly recent graduates of training programs that have been cut to 8 weeks, barely enough time to master basic. They fly defensively, predictably, and die in large numbers. His squadron accounts for 9 confirmed kills with no losses. The German formation breaks apart and flees, leaving the bombers to complete their run unmolested. During the flight home, Pretty reflects on how completely the air war has changed. A year ago, every mission was a desperate struggle, German fighters swarming the bombers, escorts running low on fuel, losses mounting. Now the escorts have the advantage in every measurable category: speed, range, altitude performance, pilot training, numerical strength. The P-51 didn't win the air war alone, but it was the critical enabler, the technological solution to what had been an intractable problem. American industrial capacity produced them in massive numbers. Packard's licensed Merlin engines provided high-altitude performance. Pilot training programs produced skilled aviators. But all of that would have been insufficient without an airframe that could escort bombers to Berlin and back. Edgar Schmued gave them that airframe. October 6, 1944. Personal letter. General Lieutenant Adolf Galland agreeing. Our fighters are outmatched in speed above 20,000 feet, outranged in endurance, and outnumbered in strength. American escort fighters now penetrate to every corner of German-controlled territory. There is nowhere safe from attack. Our pilot losses are unsustainable. I must state clearly, we are losing the air war. Bring's response is to dismiss Galland from his position 2 months later. But dismissing the messenger doesn't change the message. The Luftwaffe is defeated. The skies over Germany belong to the Americans. April 16, 1945. Over Prague, Czechoslovakia. American and British armies are driving into Germany from the west. Today's mission, escorting bombers to targets in Czechoslovakia, has proceeded without opposition. Wetmore's P-51 Mustang, Daddy's Girl, has carried him through 87 combat missions. The aircraft has been rebuilt twice after battle damage, but it's still flying, still fighting. Anything on radar? Wetmore asks the bomber formation. A milk run. These missions were rare in 1943. Common by late 1944, the Luftwaffe has been reduced to scattered remnants, a few jet fighters. The P-51 Mustang didn't defeat the Luftwaffe alone. Soviet advances in the east diverted resources. That protected bomber formations until the cumulative damage became insurmountable. That hunted German fighters until experienced pilots were gone and replacements couldn't be trained fast enough. Wetmore banks toward home, Third Reich, striking targets of opportunity. May 8, 1945. VE Day. North American Aviation. Inglewood, California. Lighter and faster than the original P-51D rolled down the production line. The war in Europe ended this morning. Church bells are ringing across Los Angeles. Workers are celebrating, planning victory parties, relieved that the killing is finally over. The aerodynamic principles he insisted on, laminar flow, low drag, efficient cooling, proved correct. The weight-saving measures he fought for gave the aircraft range competitors couldn't match. The marriage with the Merlin engine transformed good design into exceptional performance. Edgar. It's Dutch Kindleberger, North American's president, approaching through the factory noise. Remarkable achievement. Your aircraft helped win the war. More than sound, revolutionary. Range and endurance over brute force. That insight changed aerial warfare. The mission requirements were clear. Escort bombers to distant targets. This required range, which required fuel efficiency, which required minimizing drag. Once you understand the problem correctly, the solution follows logically. In 1940, fighter design focused on maximum speed and climb rate, accepting limited range as inevitable. Schmued rejected that compromise, believing range could be achieved without sacrificing performance. He was vindicated completely. The P-51's combat record speaks for itself. More aerial victories than any other American fighter in the European theater. The P-51 made possible the daylight precision bombing campaign that destroyed German industrial capacity. It achieved air superiority over Europe, enabling the D-Day invasion and subsequent ground campaigns. It forced the Luftwaffe into an unwinnable attrition war. June 1945. Technical assessment, U.S. Army Air Forces. High altitude speed. P-51D ranks first among piston-engine fighters. 400 ceiling, 41,900 feet, exceeded only by specialized high-altitude interceptors. Maneuverability, superior to P-47, equal to or better than Bf-109G. The assessment concludes, the P-51D represents the most successful combination of speed, range, altitude performance, and handling characteristics achieved in any World War II fighter aircraft. Its aerodynamic efficiency enables capabilities, particularly escort range, that competitors cannot match with existing technology. That phrase, aerodynamic efficiency, is Edgar Schmued's legacy distilled to 2 words. While other designers pursued performance through increased engine power, Schmued pursued it through reduced drag. While others accepted range limitations as fundamental constraints, Schmued designed around them. While others over-engineered for durability, Schmued calculated exactly what was needed and built precisely that: post-war service and influence. Foreign air forces fly Mustangs into the 1980s, some as fighters. Others converted to counterinsurgency aircraft. Still others preserved as racing aircraft. But the P-51's deeper legacy is in design philosophy. Post-war fighter development embraces Schmued's principles: aerodynamic refinement over brute force, careful attention to drag reduction, integration of systems to minimize weight and maximize efficiency. The jets that replaced the P-51, the F-86 Sabre, the F-100 Super Sabre owe intellectual debts to Schmued's approach. The laminar flow wing, dismissed as impractical by many in 1940, becomes standard on high-performance aircraft. The Meredith effect cooling system, which seemed too good to be true, influences cooling designs for decades. The philosophy of minimum weight structures, calculated precisely to meet requirements without excessive margin, becomes aerospace industry standard practice. September 1956. Edgar Schmued retires from North American Aviation. At his retirement dinner, colleagues and former military officers gather to honor the engineer who changed aerial warfare. The tributes are fulsome, the recognition genuine. But Schmued, now 66 years old, remains characteristically modest. "I simply applied sound aerodynamic principles to a specific problem," he tells the audience. The P-51 success wasn't magical thinking or lucky guesses. It was math. Anyone with sufficient knowledge could have designed the same aircraft. But that's not true, and everyone in the room knows it. Other engineers had the same knowledge, the same wind tunnel data, the same NACA research papers. What they lacked was Schmued's vision, the ability to see past conventional wisdom, to question assumptions everyone else accepted, to prioritize unconventional solutions over familiar approaches. In 1940, when the British asked North American Aviation to build an obsolete fighter under license, Schmued convinced his company to attempt something audacious instead: design a completely new aircraft in 120 days. When that aircraft proved mediocre with its original engine, when the Merlin-powered version proved exceptional, each iteration reflected his core philosophy: identify the mission requirement, the final accounting. Comparing the P-51 to the aircraft, it was supposed to be a licensed copy of the Curtiss P-40, reveals P-40N, late model Warhawk. Combat range, 350 miles. Top speed, 437 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. If North American had simply built P-40s under license, bomber losses would have remained unsustainable. The war might have been prolonged by months or years. Instead, Edgar Schmued insisted on attempting the impossible: designing a superior aircraft in 4 months. He succeeded, creating an airframe so efficient that it transformed aerial warfare when mated with an appropriate engine. His impossible idea that aerodynamic efficiency could deliver performance superior to brute horsepower made the P-51 Mustang not just a good fighter. Today, surviving P-51 Mustangs fly at air shows. Pilots who fly these restored warbirds report the same characteristics. Edgar Schmued designed in 1940. Light controls. In museums across America and Europe, P-51s hang from ceiling or sit in climate-controlled display halls. But the deeper story, Edgar Schmued's story, is about the power of first principles thinking. About questioning assumptions that everyone else accepts. About insisting that the impossible is merely difficult. About trusting mathematics over intuition. In April 1940, the idea of designing and building a revolutionary fighter in 120 days seemed absurd. The idea that aerodynamic efficiency mattered more than engine power seemed backwards. The idea that a relatively lightweight fighter could escort bombers 1,000 miles into Germany seemed fantasy. Edgar Schmued proved all those ideas correct. The P-51 Mustang, born from an impossible deadline, perfected through sound engineering, transformed by the right engine, one engineer's vision, made invincible over Europe.